child of Somali immigrants, and I'm the child of Honduran immigrants.
This is gonna be a great show. It's gonna be fun. We're just gonna talk about random stuff that's relevant to growing up in the U.S. as an immigrant. So join us. You might laugh, you might roll your eyes, or you might tune us out. I don't know.
It's over that. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, this is like pretty close quarter. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. This show is sponsored by our business, Mosaic Capital Group, where we focus a lot on investing in real estate and offering opportunities for you to invest alongside of us on those real estate deals. If you're interested, we definitely welcome you to check us out.
Yeah, and you can find us at mcgequity.com. Again, that's mcgequity.com. That's our website. You'll find tons of wonderful free resources there. Plus, you can reach out to us in terms of seeing new opportunities and various aspects of investing. So please check it out. There's some ebooks there that can also give you some great info. So check it out and join us.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to You're So Well Spoken. We're really excited to have you today. The show's all about the immigrant story, right? Us, especially as children of immigrants.
We're looking here.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's and it's really more about that journey, that experience. And so today we have a special guest, one of our close friends, Apisit Viriya. He goes by I. And we're super happy to have you on the show. I'm
glad to be here.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk about your experience. So let's just jump into it. First of all, maybe you could tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll go back to the beginning afterwards.
Sure. Like Alex already said, my name's I work with these guys, and so that's where we first met. But through work, we built a friendship, and we've been talking, communicating, hanging out. And so when I heard they were doing this podcast, I was honored to be invited to join you guys. Right now, I am, other than working full time, I'm a husband to my wife Amy. I have 2 young boys, 7 and 3, and so that takes up a lot of my time. I'm also one of the pastors at my church, so I do that as well. And I also started my own podcast recently, so these guys have been very helpful to me in starting that as well. So
Plug. What's the name of the podcast?
It's called Hope Reformers Podcast. So it's about God and how if God is alive, then there's always hope. So if you want, you can check that out.
Say the name again.
Hope Reformers.
Hope Reformers
Podcast.
Yeah.
So wonderful. So I'm Honduran American,
Somali American,
and Thai American. Thailand, not Taiwan.
It's funny. So I was just there recently.
Yes.
My mother cannot for her life remember the word Thailand. She's like, so how is Taiwan? I was like, I didn't go to Taiwan. Because yes, you did. I was like, I went to Thailand. She goes, that's what I said, Taiwan.
Same thing. No, I've heard. That's why I said that, because I've heard that before in my life. Thai? You're Thai? Oh, Taiwan. No, Thailand. From Thailand. Yeah.
Magical place, by the way. Thailand. Taiwan. I've never been to Taiwan. It could be good too.
No hate to Taiwan.
No, right. No, I would love to visit one day.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about your immigration story. Like, how did your family end up coming? At what age did you come?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Well, I was born here in the States, 1979. I figure out my age from there. But my parents came about 10 years before that. And so my dad came first, actually. So he came and he stayed with his, I guess it would be his uncle or cousin. I can't recall. But he came with that connection. So he stayed at his place. And while he just tried to make a living here, so he started working at restaurants, attending night school to learn English. And so, immigrant story, right? So he was just working hard to do that. At the same time, he was also beginning a relationship with my mom back in Thailand. And so they had been communicating.
Oh, man, that's gotta be hard.
Yeah, so it's long distance, really long distance.
Yeah.
And so on one of his trips back home, back to Thailand, he had talked to her parents, and then they agreed to get married. Now he couldn't bring her right away, of course. So he came back and filed the paperwork to bring his wife, my mom, back States with him. And so I think she came maybe a year after him or 2 years after him. And so she came and they grew up. I mean, they made their living here in Montgomery County, not here, but in Montgomery County,
Yeah.
Maryland. And it was, from what I hear from them, it was a bit difficult, getting started.
What year was this?
This was probably early 19,
Oh
let's
wow,
say.
it was a whole other world then.
Yeah, 1970s sometime.
Yeah.
And I was born in 79. So yeah, I think they were here maybe a year or two, or a couple years before they had me.
Yeah.
But they were trying to make ends meet, and they started out in a city called Langley Park, Maryland, in Tacoma Park, and a bit of a tough neighborhood, especially back then. But they made things work. I came along. My brother came 2 years after me, but I would hear stories from them about how difficult it was lugging my brother and I around,
Yeah.
taking them shopping without a car, and while my dad's working, and he started working as a locksmith, and that's how he made his living. So after he learned English, after he worked at the restaurant, he started trying to figure out like what kind of skill can I learn. So he actually started like as I think maybe just a cashier at a Sears, right? So they had a like locksmith station there,
Yeah.
and from there he just kind of picked the brain of the locksmith. He actually decided to go to school for that, and started shadowing him around, making the keys, like copying the keys. And eventually he's like, hey, I think I can branch out and start my own. And it was a lot of self study.
So note this: if we need to break into anything,
Yeah,
we're gonna call I's dad.
Yeah.
So they got that start. So it seems like in your story, they were here and maybe relatively established by the time you were born, because they had about 10 years to kind of figure things out and get started. Would you say that's right, or would you
Yeah,
say?
I think it was less than 10 years. It was maybe closer to 5. I'm not sure exactly when they came, what year they came, but I know it wasn't too long before they had me. But I would say they were starting to get established by the time they had me. So yeah,
Okay. And then, so from your perspective,
yeah.
I know now as an adult, Thailand is a very special place for you. Did you have did you hear stories about Thailand? Did you go back frequently? What was your connection to Thailand as you grew up?
Yeah, definitely. My parents, I remember them establishing me at a young age that, you're Thai. This is what it means to be Thai. And culturally, we would go to the Buddhist temple, which is where I guess the Buddhist temple serves not just as a religious place, but it's also like a cultural center. And so when people immigrate here, if they want to meet other Thais, they'll naturally find the local temple, and then they'll come on Sundays, and or they have a like Thai school where you learn Thai language, you learn the Buddhism, and so that's where we would naturally go. And so at a young age, they were establishing me in some Thai identity. These are your parents and grandparents. This is where you're from, and they were just teaching me cultural aspects, of 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 being Thai. And you would also pick that up at the temple or Sunday schools, and they would take us and teach us cultural things, songs that are in Thai, and so that was never. I always knew that I was Thai, but born here.
Right.
And they kind of, I remember at one point that they were telling me like, hey, you're gonna grow up, you're gonna meet people from all over the world, right? But just remember your identity, your Thailand. And they were even saying like, hey, you're gonna meet people of other faiths too, but you're Thai, so you have to be Buddhist. I was like, yeah, I got it, right? So that was in me as a young boy. My brother and I too.
So I know you're Christian now. How did that transition happen, and how did the family take it?
Yeah, I mean that was a big thing. I mean, because I even now I
It's a
remember
big part of your
I remember,
identity.
yeah, I remember they were telling me this like to be Thai is to be Buddhist,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure like many other countries have their to be Indian is to probably be Hindu or
Yeah. Somali to be Muslim.
exactly. And so I just never questioned it. And so for me, I just had a naturally being at the temple, we would learn about Buddhism, and so this is just what it is, right? And I didn't know about any other faith. I was like, all right, this is what it is. And so it wasn't until I was probably like 13, 12, where I actually began experiencing like the supernatural, like to the point where I knew that there's more to this world than what you can see physically.
Tell us
And
more about that.
oh my goodness, so that can go on. So basically, if it was like scary movie stuff, right? So like doors closing by themselves, hearing voices in the house,
What?
like yeah, scary stuff. My brother separately, my brother would experience similar things,
Okay.
right? And um yeah, things happening with pictures, all that kind of stuff you see in scary movies is stuff that actually happened to my brother and I
In your house?
in my house. And so
Where's this house?
it's in Bethesda, Maryland. No, but
I kind of want to go, but I don't want to go at the same time.
so what happened was at that age, you can imagine you're telling your parents, "Hey, this is what happened to
Yeah,
me. This
they
is just
freak out.
this just I heard this voice. They're calling my name. All this stuff, right?"
Yeah.
And of course, they're gonna be like, watching too much TV,
Yeah.
maybe candy before bed, like whatever. But um, my brother and I knew it was happening, so we would actually comfort each other. So yeah, so I'll be like, "Hey, if something happens, just come talk to me. I'll do the same." Anyways, so that was pretty consistent. Like it was intense for sometimes, but then it would kind of go on and off like my life. But
For how many years?
I don't know. It's a long time.
Wow.
I mean, you said 12, 13, and you
Yeah, I
said you
mean,
became Christian at 30.
right. So yeah,
it's like
yeah,
Wow.
18 years? Like,
So, I mean, is your family still in the same house, or did they move?
yeah.
So it still follows.
Well, things have gotten better. So I was gonna say like when I experienced all this, for me it drew me closer to Buddhism naturally. 'Cause I'm like, if there's a spiritual realm,
Yeah.
I need to figure out what's going on.
Right.
So that really pushed me into Buddhism even more. And so I mean, I guess amongst my friends, I was one of the most like devout.
Yeah.
I mean, going to the temple, going just to meditate.
Yeah. I mean, if you're seeing things that I can
Right.
imagine.
I need to find answers.
Yeah.
So that's naturally. And so, I became like a monk, like shaved my head, like orange robe, like twice in
Really?
my life. It's kind of cultural in Thai,
Yeah.
for men to do that.
Oh, so it's like a norm that at some point.
So you're supposed to.
Okay.
I did it twice. So like I did it when I was young, and then I did it when I was older.
So like for how long?
About a month each time.
Okay.
Right. And then just on my own, just reading and talking to the monks and going to like evening prayers and stuff like that. And so that was my journey into like going deeper. And that's why, because of the super.
Just in terms of like your family's perspective in terms of this, did you share this with them?
Yeah.
What
So
did they say?
It's interesting. It's almost like when I look back, maybe it's kind of compartmentalized. So at first, they'll just kind of brush it off or whatever. But then casually, like my mom will mention, "Oh, when I was young, I experienced this, and this."
Oh.
And I'm like, "Why did you believe me then?" So it's almost like
interesting.
compartmentalized, almost like I don't know, something's out there, but
It's a
I'm not gonna-
childhood thing.
right? Because she would share stories when she was young, she would see things too, and
Wow.
yeah. So I just like, okay, well, actually, if you talk to a lot of Thai people, they're very open to the supernatural. When you were in Thailand, you probably saw like spirit houses,
Yeah, everywhere.
right? Everywhere, restaurants, houses. It's
Yeah.
because I would say like it's a superstitious thing,
Yeah.
but it's also because they're aware like there's something
There's
going
more,
on.
yeah.
So those spirit houses, they're supposed to be like to appease the local spirits. So if
Right.
you build a house somewhere, you don't know like who was living there or what kind of spirits live there.
Yeah.
So you set up the house so that you're like, here, I'm building my house here, but I don't want to offend you.
Here's your space.
Here's your space. I'm giving you offering of food and incense to appease the spirits.
Okay.
And it's just so pronounced
Yeah,
because there's
you
an awareness.
You see it everywhere.
Yeah, and that's the reason in malls they'll make
Yeah,
like the big
commercial
ones,
building
right?
everywhere. Yeah.
And that's,
Even my hotel, they had one like really elaborate right outside the hotel.
yeah. And actually, if you go to a lot of places outside the West, there is a general awareness of the spiritual realm. I
Mhm.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
Japan also, they had them everywhere.
yeah. And so, I mean, for me, that was the journey growing up. I never heard about Jesus until I was in college. That's when I began like at least hearing about who he is. But I was like, no, there's no way because I'm Thai.
Yeah.
Right. Back to the cultural.
That's interesting
Yeah.
to hear, though, because like you grew up here,
I
where
grew up here.
Christianity is kind of
Yeah.
the norm. Maybe not.
Not
I don't know what you call it, but
Yeah.
but it is the mainstream, like
Yeah.
Christmas, like all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like everyone is generally considered Christian by default, and then there's people who are like maybe more serious about it, more committed to it. But the assumption is if you just see someone on the street, they probably would consider themselves Christian. Is that not true? Maybe that's my own assumption.
Maybe, I mean, I'm sure it's still the dominant like faith in the U.S., but I would say
in our area.
Yeah, it's not as much as maybe back in the day. That's why I was like,
yeah, like this area. So we're in the DMV, the D.C., Maryland, Virginia area.
Yeah,
and it's super diverse here. I mean, you literally have people from everywhere. So I think around this area, not safe to assume that that's the norm. I mean, I assume that's the norm if it's a white person. But anyone, if you have some sort of pigmentation, I'll give you some sort of leeway in terms of.
But even like atheism, like
there's a lot of that too.
I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, but to hear you say you didn't hear about Christianity until college, that's surprising. Like
I probably heard like Christmas.
You didn't know the details.
I didn't know the details.
Yeah.
No one shared with me until then. And I was the guy who's like debating Christians. So I was like, this is why Buddhism is better.
Really?
This is why you should follow Buddha's teachings instead of Jesus. Like that. I would be that guy.
This is in high school or college?
This is in college, undergrad, yeah. But my friends were patient with me, and they would lovingly explain. And so that was, I guess, that seed was planted.
Mm.
And so again, back to my story, it wasn't until I was 30.
Mm.
So I had gone through a really rough time actually. Not only the spiritual stuff, but like depression, OCD, after college, right? And psychiatrist, pills and stuff. But things did get better somewhat, but then things got really intense when I was 30. Tried to find answers and freedom from Buddhism, but nothing worked. And then I felt like God spoke to me through like actually a radio program. I was like, okay, well, if this is God talking to me, I'm going to go to the church and check it out again. And that day, like the pastor was saying something that was exactly what I was going through. And so I'm like, what is happening? So, I was at his house 2 days later, just to one-on-one talk to him. He told me about Jesus again, and then he just explained the gospel. That we all live in a broken world, that there are evil spirits, that Jesus did die on the cross for our sins, he rose again, and because what he did and what he's done for us, we can be set free and we can have a relationship with him. And he just invited me, like without pressure. He just kind of said, like, hey, do you want him in your life? And I have no other choice right now because I'm going through something really crazy. I mean, details, like I can share details if you want, but basically it was really intense. I thought I was like, and so I was like, yes. And then when I said yes, like I literally felt like the freedom. Like, I mean, like the heaviness that I was going through.
Felt it lifted.
I mean, it was lifted. And not only that, but I felt like fully alive. And I was like, and so that's when everything kind of clicked for me. I was like, oh my goodness, Jesus is real. Oh my goodness, if he's real, then everything changes. And then like the birds were singing, like the clouds parted, and like it was the most beautiful morning I ever seen. But then I had to talk to my parents. I go back to my parents, right?
Yes, so that's got to be
one thing I didn't mention was before I made the decision, I actually prayed. I said, well, I prayed. I was like, Buddha, if you're real, I need you to help me. I was like, Jesus, if you're real, then show me, right? Mm-hmm. And I kept feeling like, okay, I've tried to seek help from Buddhism many years and nothing helped. And I was like, Jesus, if you want me to follow you, then please help me with my parents, because I will need to talk to them first. Because of what they said when I was young.
Yeah.
Right. So going back to that, I remember sitting them down before I went to my pastor's house. And I said, Mom, Dad, like, I'm going through something right now. And they knew. I think they thought it was stress, because I had gone back to grad school. I was in grad school. And I do have the full testimony, like the full story of why.
Oh, please share the link.
Okay, we'll put it in. Yeah, I have it. It's on YouTube. But I sat with them and I said, hey, I'm going through something. Yeah. And I said, I think I found something that can help me though. I said, okay, well, what is it? I was like, religion? They're like, which one? And I'm like, Christianity? They're like, well, if you think it's going to help you, then go ahead.
Oh, that's
like
so nice.
very, I'm like, and I was almost shocked. I was like, wait a minute, like, you're not going to push back? They were just like, yeah, if you think it's going to help you, go. That's okay.
No,
And
they
I
were
was,
worried about you.
yeah, so I was like, really, all right. And then so that's why I felt free to go talk to the pastor.
It's good.
Now, that wasn't the end of the story though, because I think 2 weeks later or something like that, when I knew that, I was like, oh my goodness, if this Jesus is real, then everything changes. So I was like, okay, because he's real and what he's done for me, I feel like I can't, how do I say it? It's like being married and you can't keep your like girlfriends, right?
Yeah.
So I felt like I had to give all my Buddhist stuff back. So that means like my necklaces, my bracelets, my picture. I had like a Buddha picture in my room or something. And so I was like, oh, I just want to throw it away kind of, but I was like, I feel like that would really hurt them. So I
Yeah.
just kind of put everything together. I gave it back to my mom. Hey, I'm Christian now, and feel like I shouldn't have this. And that she's like, I thought it was just for like temporary. Like, I don't think she knew what I was.
She thought it was a
Yeah.
phase.
She thought it was a phase. And so, as the oldest, I'm the oldest son. So my mom did ask me, she's like, what does this mean? Like, she even asked me, are you not Thai anymore? Like, because
Wow.
it's so closely like
Just
tied
the
together.
identity.
Are you renouncing your identity
Yeah.
in being Thai? And I said, no, I'm still Thai. I'm still Thai. I'm just a Christian now. But and then she said, well, what if you're the oldest son? So when I pass away, who's gonna do like the rituals for us? Because the way Buddhism works, at least the way we practice it, is like if someone dies and you do like the ceremony for them, they'll get blessings in the next life. Or like, yeah. So, and you'll sometimes offer food to the monks. And the belief is that if you offer the food to the monks, and that the person who died will get the food in the next life. It's kind of like I don't think it's something that Buddha taught, but it's more almost like a mix of like
Yeah,
local
it's
culture.
local
Yeah.
culture, yeah.
And I was like, she asked me like, who's gonna do it for me then? And I'm like, oh my god, like, I'm like a baby Christian. I'm just like, why are you asking me all this stuff? Like,
Like,
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
getting
Yeah, I'm
started.
just, I have no, I don't, mom, I don't know. I love you. I'll take care of you guys. Like, I don't know all these answers, right? So
Right.
I was like, oh my goodness. I felt like if she asked me that, I was like,
Yeah,
Hurt.
right?
that's a
I can
lot.
imagine, yeah.
Oof. Yeah, so that was rough. I will say, and then my dad later, like I was like, well, again, if Jesus is real, I want everyone to know. I mean, because it's of eternal importance.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember like I actually like tried to give him like a Bible in Thai. He was not having it. He was just like I don't want it. You can take it back, and he was just like, but like I would say, it's been what, that's 2010, 14 years. But I'll say like their heart is really, really softened. They're still not Christians, but they are. They've seen what God has done in my life, and so they're like
More open.
more open. So they'll even allow me to pray when we meet together and we eat lunch or something together. They'll let me pray and for the food and bless the food. Um, they've even visited church a couple of times, so they're very more open. So that's, I didn't know the conversation was gonna take this route, but it was I mean a big part of my journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
and
it's
ties in the culture too.
yeah.
So now, oh yeah. So the other thing I will mention is I've always been, I guess since I was in college, I've been really like a advocate for like trying to get like more like empowerment for the Thai community here in America. So I actually helped like kind of launch this nonprofit called like Thai Alliance in America.
Mhm.
And it was to empower the Thai people here in America. Because I feel like Thai people, there's not really like a strong identity here. Right.
You're the only one I've seen
Right.
in this entire area. Like, I didn't even know there were Thai people in the DC area.
So I remember being on a school bus, like
Yeah.
it's been middle school or something. And I don't remember, it was like, I don't think it was a friend. I think it was just like random people on the bus, and maybe like trying to be like smart or funny, and they're like, where are you from? Right. And I'm like, they're like, you're Asian, right? And I'm like, are you from China? Right. And I'm like, no, I'm from Thailand. They're like, what's that? I remember that and so
Taiwan?
yeah, Taiwan again. And so like, yeah, it's just not, I knew the people, I knew there were Thai people because of the temple,
Yeah.
but in terms of my school, there weren't that many. And
Is there an enclave for Thai people in the U.S.? Because I know, like, for my people, it's
Mhm.
Minneapolis and Minnesota.
It was
Like, we're all over that city.
okay. Obviously, LA.
LA?
LA is like there's a Thai town. It's
Oh,
really
wow.
small, but
Okay.
it's like more like a Thai street.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But they actually have a Thai town there.
Okay.
So LA be number one. I think New York, Atlanta, Chicago. The major cities. This area, Virginia has a lot too. I think it's the fourth maybe in terms
Really?
of population. So I mean, we're a minority amongst the minorities,
Yeah, you guys are
right?
very incognito. You blend in well.
Yeah, so even in 2010 with the census, like one of the nonprofit thing
Yeah.
was like we need to get out and do the census
Yeah.
because like right now even on the forum it's like Asian and then like there's like Filipino, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, other,
Yeah.
and I'm like, man. So the whole initiative for the nonprofit, and we partner with other Thai nonprofits around the
Yeah,
country,
yeah.
even the embassy. We're like is like get out and vote and write in. You have to write in other, and then there's a blank space where you write in Thai.
Thai. Okay.
Everyone's got to do it this way, right? So that maybe in 2020 we'll have a box. Like that was the whole initiative. Let's get a box, but we didn't get a box 2020. But we tried.
Hey, you still working at it.
Yeah, yeah. And so all that to say, I had a heart to help the Thai people from before, but then, and that's kind of why I became into the pastoral role is because when I met Jesus and I'm like, okay, well, if I want to help the Thai people, and if this Jesus is real, then I have to get trained up so I can answer the tough questions, so I can help the community, and that's why I went to seminary, a year after. So that seminary took 9 years because I was doing part time while I was working at USA. But all that was so that I could help Thai people, and that's why I even now like the Hope Reformers doing like a nonprofit now. One of the projects some of the projects we'll be doing will be helping the um basically the gospel spread in Thailand, helping missionaries that are already there. Um, yeah, so the focus of helping Thai people is still there, but in terms of how it has changed. Yeah.
Have you met other Christian Thais or?
There are some,
Yeah.
even in the States.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, there's some. There's some.
There's a very special one he met too.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh
my
yes,
wife. My
yes.
wife. Yes.
Is that how you guys met?
We met. So I actually met her sister first, so we were friends. Oh, well, more like acquaintances. And so when I met her sister, she was pregnant already, and okay, congratulations. And we didn't really stay in touch that much, right? But she did tell me, oh, I have a sister who lives in Thailand, and she's a strong Christian. Oh, that's cool. Kind of just okay. But then I get a call on a Sunday morning, and she said, oh, I'm Peter's sister. Okay, and she just gave birth. I was like, oh, congratulations, right? Like there was a complication though. He almost died. And I was like, oh my goodness. So like, oh, she had told me and my mom about you. You're a Christian and you're Thai. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, can I come pray for her at the hospital? And I'll bring one of my pastors. So we go to the hospital, and that's where I first meet Amy. I didn't know it was my wife, but I met her there. We prayed for her sister, and then she eventually got better and fully recovered. Amy and I kept in touch, but she came here. So she was here for school and work, but then she had moved back to Thailand. So we had kept in touch, but before she left, we decided like, we wanted to date each other, even though it was long distance. But we'll see.
I thought Amy was raised here.
No,
I didn't know
no.
she was straight from Thailand.
Yeah, she's from Thailand.
You can't even tell.
Yeah, so she went to Thailand, but then she went to part of her schooling in Singapore.
Okay.
That's where she picked up the English really well. And then she went to college in Ohio.
It's not even the English, just like her mannerisms.
Oh.
She's just
she's
very
like,
American.
Yeah, international college in Ohio.
Yeah.
Worked here for many years. Grad school, UVA,
Yeah.
Australia, and then back to Thailand.
Okay.
So
She's very international.
Yeah. So she
very
came back.
cosmopolitan.
But yeah, through that, we met and got married about a year later after meeting. So it's a very quick courtship. Yeah.
And I'm just gonna let you know, she's a quality woman. This man, high five.
Oh, you know what my pastor said? My pastor said because he saw me as like a single guy and just kind of like doing my thing. He's like, now I know God is real.
Yeah.
Like when he met her, he's like, oh, and she agreed to date me and get married with me. She's like, I know God is real now.
Yeah. No, she looks like a
So
model.
offensive. That is messed up, man.
But I
Look at
accept
these
it.
biceps. That is messed up. But yeah,
I
she's
accept
lovely.
it. I
She's
accept it.
awesome.
You know,
Yeah.
it's better to marry up, right?
No. You did well, my friend. You did well.
Oh
Man.
goodness. Well, that's beautiful. So, all right. So, first of all, I definitely do want to share the link to the full testimony because I think that's really beautiful. I think I didn't know that like you always had that goal of helping the Thai people. And so, okay, so going back to like the basics of it, right? Having grown up here your whole life, I mean, I'll say for in my experience, Hondurans are kind of mean to American Hondurans. Because if you're not Honduran enough, they're like, you're an American, and they don't say it in a nice way. They're like, you're not one of us, and they're pretty quick to push you out.
Jumbo Pepsi guy.
I don't know this story.
Go ahead. You tell us your story.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I do want to hear it.
Alex has a terrible memory. I have to remember parts of his life for him. So this is one of the stories he told me. He went back to Honduras at one point to work for a nonprofit that one of our mutual friends started. And while he was doing the nonprofit, he kept saying about how like they just kept criticizing his Americanness. And the highlight was one time he went to a store to get Pepsi, and they've got those giant what is it like?
Like 3 liters?
Yeah, like 3 liter. They're addicted to sodas over there. But anyway, he goes in there and he's asking for Pepsi. So he's like, Jumbo Pepsi. And they're like, Pepsi, what's Jumbo Pepsi? This guy, Jumbo Pepsi. Like, and then he's like, what is it called? And they're like, Jumbo Pepsi. Like it's the most obvious thing.
Like,
Jumbo
duh.
Pepsi.
Yeah, they did make fun of me. Okay, thank you for reminding me of that story.
He had deleted that from his memory already.
Yeah, they're like, this guy.
Were they like mocking you?
Yeah, they're like,
Jumbo Pepsi.
Jumbo Pepsi. Like, instead of Jumbo Pepsi. And yeah. It was just, anyways, the point, thank you for, it does connect and it's
my
funny.
goodness.
But yeah, the point was like, did you ever, like, that's, I think in me, that kind of sparked a little bit of an identity crisis where I want to be more Honduran to like make up for that rejection feeling that I've had at different points growing up.
Did with your daughter's names even.
Yeah, like I definitely picked names that were like very Hispanic names that you can't like, I don't know, like a very common name would be Jennifer, but then she could too easily become Jennifer, and then
And drink a Jumbo Pepsi.
and drink a Jumbo Pepsi, and all of a sudden she's if she,
No longer Honduran.
she gets married, she loses the last name, and she's just a white lady now.
Just Jessica.
And so again, no hate to anyone named Jennifer, but I picked a more kind of, even now she's already doing, actually it's funny, like she, in Spanish you ask her, hey, ¿cómo te llamas? What's your name? And she'll say Fernanda. And then if you ask her in English, what's your name? She'll say Fernanda. And it's hilarious. She's doing it, but it's still a name that you can't really avoid the Hispanicness of it. But for you, the question is like, where does that connection or that longing for Thailand come from?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Did you go there a lot growing up?
My parents took me about every 4 years, like growing up.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Why? I think I think part of it was that upbringing of like being Asian. It's like minority amongst minorities, right? So early on, before second grade, I grew up in an area. It was mostly like Black and Latino. And then we moved to Bethesda, and it was like almost everyone was Caucasian. And so, at an early age, I was, kids can be mean, right? So they're letting you know, like, you're different. You're not like us, And so, like, okay, well, if I'm not like, then who am I? Right? And so I had to like deal with identity and, speaking about the name, like they can kids can be mean, right? So my first name's Apisit, right? But they're like Apisit, like
Oh,
because imagine where the kids would go with that, right?
Yeah.
So there's already like this. Okay, I remember even asking my mom, "Can I change my name?" Because it's kind of embarrassing, right? And I was, identity crisis. I'm like, "Can I change it to something more American?" And why would you want to do that? And I explained, and you know, I don't know how she never told me how she felt when I asked that, but I had to wrestle with this. But it was like middle school to high school where I'm like, no, I'm gonna be like proud of who I am. Like, forget everybody else, right? And I'm gonna represent. And so it's more like a defiance,
Mm.
right? And so I think through that journey, I'm like, okay, well, what does it mean to be Thai? Like, how can I help Thai people to not feel like we're like this tiny fish, right? In like a big sea. How can we empower people to feel more confident in your identity? So, of course there was cultural nights and stuff like that. And
Mhm.
in college we actually formed like the Thai club at UMBC. And so, there was this kind of like, okay, we're starting to build a sense of community, identity, being proud of who we are, and letting other people know who we are. And so that grew into the nonprofit that I talked about. I'd say that was the journey, maybe. And I never thought about it, but maybe that's why, because of all the upbringing.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
identity.
yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I can imagine that when people are wrestling with that like identity, oh, I'm different, you can go one of two ways. You can either say, okay, I'm going to reach back home,
Yeah.
probably more like what a lot of us have done in this room, like, oh, I'm going to reach back and embrace that otherness. Or a lot of other people, I don't have a lot of family and friends who maybe reach more towards the Americanness. Okay, I'm really going to assimilate and fit in.
That's
And
my
make,
brother.
yeah, like even, yeah, exactly. So like, and I don't think there's any right or wrong answer, right? It's just like within your heart, like you got to go one of those two ways and try to like find your identity and pick your identity, right? Who you want to be. That's interesting.
Just remember that old Japanese man. Identity. We had a moment where Alex and I were in Japan one time. This is many, many years ago. And yeah. And there was an old Japanese man. He was like the information desk guy. And at that time, barely anyone in Japan spoke English, which was weird. Well, I guess. But this guy spoke the best English we found, and he just wanted to have a conversation with us. And at some point, he looks at us after giving us directions, and he goes, "What?" To me specifically, yeah. He goes, "What is your identity?" And I was just like, "Oh, we're from the U.S. We're American." He's like, "Ah, man." Then he looks at me again. He goes, "But what is your identity?" And I was just like, "Oh, my family, we're Somalian originally." And like, "Oh, Somali." And then I thought that was it. And then he goes, "What is your identity?" I'm like, "I don't know what you want from me." I was like, "Okay, we immigrated." Like, I started going through our entire back history. And he's like,
But what is your identity?
But what is your identity? I was like, "Do I need to go to like my tribe? I don't know."
What is your question?
It's like, do I have to dig deep into my soul?
Be more
and figure
specific.
out-
What are you asking?
I am one with. I am man. I am human. I don't know.
Oh my goodness.
It's a hard question.
It was a hard question. I was like, you saw, I was all discombobulated. I don't know how to answer after a while. This guy's just standing there laughing at me.
Apparently, he knows your identity. So
he knew.
He didn't need that. He didn't need that.
Just thought you were an Arab.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
Yeah, and as I don't know if you I'd be curious. I don't know if you guys get it, but like, where are you from? Like, do you guys get that question?
That's why we called the show.
That's right. So like, where are you from? And I'm like, I think I know what they mean, but I'm like, maybe I'm from Maryland, right? I'm from Bethesda or whatever, or Rockville. Where are you really from? No, I'm really from, And then I'll just be like, oh, my parents are from Thailand. Because I'm born here. Like, I am American, right?
Yeah.
So
we actually had this on one of our earlier episodes. If you guys watched the episode, we talked about this. Like that question in general and how it's viewed. Like, where are you from? I gave an example where I was in Brazil and they have a huge Japanese expat community that's been there for generations. So they're Brazilian. So at the time I didn't know this, and I was speaking to this one girl that I met down there. She's Japanese Brazilian. So I was like, "Oh, hey, yeah, you're cool. Where are you from?" And she was like, "Here." I was like, yeah. But I mean, like,
you did it.
Where's your family
You did
from?
it.
She's like, here. I was like, yeah, I get that, but I mean, like, originally, she just wouldn't hunker down. She just was like 10 toes in, like, here, I'm Brazilian. I was like, you're an asshole. I was like, I'm just asking. I know you're Brazilian. I'm not questioning that. I'm just saying, also, what other trace ethnicity do you have? So it's like,
You totally been.
yeah, I flipped it. I flipped it. I was just,
But I think the point that he made that was really interesting is it was especially like among us, right? Like if I ask you and I'm like, hey, I'm different, you're different, we have something in common, and it could be outreach to try to find a connection.
yeah. Like,
And
I'm
I
trying
think
to
that's
bond
what
with
he
you
was
'cause
trying to do,
your family has immigrant roots. Mine has immigrant roots. I'm trying to bond.
especially like within the context of like, hey, this is like who we end up being friends with kind of naturally, at least for me. So it's a really natural question to ask. But then if someone's asking it in a way is like, hey, you're different, you're other, you're weird. What are you? You know, that
It's
is
the tone.
yeah.
It's all about the tone.
And so it can be a thing to push you away, to make you other, or it can be something to say, hey, like let's be friends.
We're the
I'm
same.
interested in you.
Yeah.
What is your identity? You know?
Yeah. Just don't keep asking it for 20 times.
So then that response of like Montgomery County, Maryland, and like you just let them watch them squirm. That can be funny if the person's being a jerk, or it could end a potential friendship. Like, hey, like this person was trying to reach out and connect with me, but I mean, you follow your gut, right? Like, what are they trying to do with that question?
Yeah, you can get the vibe of the person if they're trying to be offensive with it and isolate you, or if they're trying to connect with you.
Have you guys interviewed someone who's like from a European background, maybe a recent immigrant from Europe?
Yeah.
And then maybe
I'm just
like
gonna
that'd
have
be an
John.
interesting question, right? Because they may like visually they may blend in with
Yeah,
the Caucasian
Yeah.
population, but
they're culturally different.
culturally different. I
Yeah.
wonder, just that'd be interesting.
And then I mean, we have a friend who is Spanish from Spain, and so he's white European, but his name is very like Hernando Escobar. It's like it's a very Spanish name.
Yeah.
But here, that name connotation is Latin American. It's like a lower class thing from the perception of racism, right? But he's a white European guy who's like, why are you being racist towards me? I'm one of you. And so
You should tell him that.
yeah. But yeah, just that's an interesting dynamic too. But
yeah, I'm gonna see him today after this.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
cool. Say hi.
That
Tell him congratulations on being a white man, white cisgendered male.
I'm not gonna do
in
that,
our
but
society.
I'll say it came from you.
Let's see. What else do you guys want to talk on? So we talked. Oh, go ahead.
I did want to something you said earlier resonated with me. When you first told your parents you were going to do the conversion, and instead of like that horrible feeling that they were going to come down on you and be disappointed or whatnot, they were actually embracing and accepting. I connected with that because that happened to me with law school. So when I went to law school, it was just the worst experience of my life. Like, it was the most stressful, physically and emotionally draining experience I've ever gone through. And while I was going through all of this, my parents were watching all this happen. And I remember one day, just randomly talking to them. It was just a lot. This is too much. It's way more. And, like, my hair is gone from the stress. They said something that was like so shocking and so out of place, and like just completely like took me back. They said, it's okay, you can quit if you want and come home, it's all right. And for African parents, I don't know if you that's not normal. That's not normal. You succeed, damn it. You succeed, or we'll kick you out. You do the best that you damn well can. There's no quitting. But they were like, yeah, this is terrible. We can see it's terrible, the way that you're feeling, what you're going through. So it's okay. You can quit. I mean, obviously, that made me like double down and do it.
Reverse psychology?
Reverse psychology.
Yeah, maybe they...
They went to the bedroom, they're like,
yeah,
it worked. No, I was kidding.
But yeah, they did that, and it was just like it.
How beautiful.
Yeah, it was. It was like a really, really touching moment. I was like, you guys love me.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's I was gonna say that at the core of it, our parents love us, right?
Mhm.
They care for us, and I think even the reason why they're here is because
Of us.
of us, right? They
Yeah.
didn't maybe we weren't born yet, but they knew like we want a better life for our kids,
Yeah, mine tell me all the time.
right?
Literally all the time.
So
Told me
yeah,
yesterday.
oh, yeah, at the core they love us,
Yeah.
right? So
No, not the love part, but
oh,
the,
what?
the I'm here because of you. This ain't fun for me. This is all for you. But they're great.
Yeah.
They did sacrifice a lot, and they did do it. And all of our
All of our
parents.
parents, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Sure. Did your parents ever tell you like, hey, like we brought you this far, you got to take the kids like this far, like kind of build off,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So like they're like you got a master's, it means your kid's got to get a PhD next, stuff like that, But
And then their kid,
I don't even
I
know
don't know.
what's next.
Take over the world. Natural next step. Domination.
yeah. No, I think that's definitely like often implied, but then a few times in your lifetime you'll get that directly. Like, hey, with all the limitations of not knowing the language, of coming here and like, figuring it out and everything, you're supposed to go further because you know the language. You're here. You're one of them. You're supposed to go further. I've definitely had that pep talk, which is always in the back of the mind, like, ooh.
Mine is actually it fluctuates. That was when I was younger. That was the key one. Now it's actually a little bit more of the reverse because I think a lot of times my parents feel like I've gotten too Americanized, and they're like, "No, you got to bring it back. You got to take it back a little bit. You got too far to come back."
Interesting. A lot of my not a lot. So a couple of my friends that were Thai American,
Yeah.
they wanted to move back. It's almost like their parents struggled to bring them here. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, we're just gonna go back, and they're like, okay.
Honestly, I mean, having been to Thailand a couple of times, I don't see why anyone would want to leave.
And it's one thing if you go back with the privilege
That's
of
true.
being
Yeah.
American and maybe earning American salary in a place like that. I mean,
But it's
there's all
also
the passport bros who are, like that. That's a thing.
no passport bros aside. We're not passport. But that aside, I think also the world from which they came in back in the day, like 1970 Thailand and Thailand today, are two different. I mean, from the first time him and I went to Thailand, like back in the 2000s, early 2000s to today, night and day. It's a completely different country.
That's what my mom says. And she's like, she was like, should I retire in Thailand? But she's like,
totally.
it's a different Thailand than I knew. But she's been here longer than she's been.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a different Thailand. So now this is more like home.
Yeah.
So and plus the grandkids are.
Yeah. It's actually funny you say that, the more like home thing. So my parents always like romanticize going back home all the time. They even were planning on buying a retirement, or they did, but it didn't work out too well. A retirement property back home. So right before the pandemic, they actually went there, and they spent an entire summer there. I don't think my father could come back here fast enough. It's just different. I mean, not only is it different, but you're treated like an other when you're there, which is not something
because you've been in America so long.
Yeah. Like they can feel it and tell, and then the way that you're treated. I mean, you're still fine, but it's just a level. It's like you feel when you go back home.
Yeah, I was laughing because my mom got that. I remember when she got it, and she didn't say anything. Like someone just looked at her and they're like, "You're coming from up north, aren't you?" And she was so offended. She was so hurt because she was like, "I'm home. I'm with my people." And I think it was one of the first times she started to realize like it's not home anymore. Like, and then grandkids and everything. And now she has no desire to go back. But yeah, like I think very similar. That's really interesting. We should do more shows with people in our parents' generation.
That would be interesting
to get that get that angle. Yeah.
But it's funny that vibe just wears off too, because now they're like,
oh, they still.
Yeah, it's weird. It's they romanticize it the second they come back here, but then when they're there and they're in it, they're like, yeah, I need to leave.
maybe they're thinking about the Somalia that they remember. Maybe.
Well, that's the other aspect too. Like my parents never grew up in Somalia.
That's right,
They were born and raised in Yemen actually. So to them, Somalia was only a place that they only went a couple of times.
Okay.
Because my grandparents ended up retiring there. But again, they associate and connect with the people better than they do people here a lot of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're like the inception of immigrants.
Yeah.
An immigrant within an immigrant within an immigrant.
Yeah, we even have like the Madagascar inside too.
There you go.
Yeah. And then now we found out my dad is a white man now also.
Oh,
After we
congrats
did,
to
yeah,
him.
yeah. We call him the colonizer at the house now. I don't think he appreciates that.
Oh, you
too
did like
much.
an ancestry.com thing?
Yeah, well, I did the so I did it for the medical reasons, like one of those
Oh,
DNA
yeah,
tests.
yeah.
Just because, like that's another issue that I have a struggle with my father specifically. Like nobody talks about medical situations. You just pass away because it's your time and it was written. When it's our time, it's your time. There's nothing you can do about it. So I was like, no, we're gonna do. I need to know everything that's going on potentially inside your walking time bombs of a body. So I did a full DNA test on everybody, me, myself, myself and the two of them. And first I found out I'm the most African in the household. So,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. I call them posers now. The rest of them are just imitation, which is hilarious. And my dad was like 9% Southern European,
Oh, interesting.
which we have no idea where that came from. I guess colonialization or something. But yeah, so now we're like, you're the white man in the house. No wonder, all the drama. So entitled.
Well, so you told us a little bit about Hope Reformers. Is there anything else you'd really like to share at this point, or if not, you can share a little bit more about what you're doing with Hope Reformers right now, and
Sure.
and then maybe a quick invitation for people to connect if you're interested. If you're interested in people connecting with you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Hope Reformers, it started as a podcast, as I mentioned earlier, but I think within the past few months, I feel like we're going to also pivot that into a nonprofit. So I just recently came up with I guess they make you do a business plan, and then there's some steps that you're supposed to follow, come up with a board. I did ask Mr. Escobar here to be on the board. He graciously said yes. And so we had our first meeting recently. We just filed with Maryland. And so, we hope to do some really good things with the nonprofit. I have never started fresh like this from a nonprofit, but I'm excited to see what's going to happen. And I wanted to do it with friends. So that's why I asked Alex to join. And I know he's worked with nonprofits in the past. And so I'm excited for that. And the podcast is still going on. It's once a month. And what else? Yeah, there's some projects coming in the future that will be run kind of through Hope Reform, but maybe we'll release that later. We'll share about that later. Don't have a website. The Hope Reformers you can find on YouTube, Spotify. But most people watch it on YouTube, and so it's kind of set up like this actually. And sometimes like it's in person, sometimes via computer. But want to connect? We maybe could put the email at the bottom.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah, we could do that.
All right, awesome.
All right, thank you guys for.
All right, thank you so much, man.
Yeah,
appreciate
that. Awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun conversation.
Yeah. Nah, I want to walk through your parents' house now. Go there around Halloween time.
Yeah, well, actually, because I did stay there even after, and I was just praying, and then things feel better in the house. So
really,
yeah, things feel a lot better in the house.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. No sightings, nothing since.
No, not like that. Just
you missed out on a solid Halloween.
That's why I can't watch scary movies today. I just
too real,
it's
too close to home.
too real. It's like too close to home. Yeah.
I don't find them fun.
That's ironic because your wife thrives on them.
Really?
Yeah, it's actually funny. She'll force us all to watch scary movies with her, and then when the shocking scenes show up, she gets such a high off just looking at your especially his arm.
Yeah, I get goosebumps.
And she'll be like, "Did you get him? Did you get him?" She'll be like, "Yeah." You can just see her just feeding off his fear. It's unsettling.
It is creepy. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I don't enjoy it, and so I just don't watch them anymore. Life's hard
Something
enough.
happened to you, or just never?
No,
just
like
okay.
I just want to be happy. I just
Creepy
want,
wife.
I just want to I want to feel good after watching something. It's so rare for me to be able to just sit and watch a movie for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, I don't want to be like, ugh. I want to come out of it feeling like, hey, life is going to be great. Let's get out there. Let's go get him, Tiger.
You don't have to check under your bed.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
I could just see her in the middle of the night, you waking up and she's like, Are you still scared? Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much. Thanks for tuning in. We'll keep at these and just keep trying to learn more and kind of, what's the word? Connect and validate our feelings as children of immigrants, as immigrants, because it's kind of cool to know, like, you grew up feeling different. I grew up feeling different. Maybe you grew up feeling different. And we have that in common. You know, it's kind of cool. So keep tuning in and thank you. Thank you so much for being part of this.
Yeah. And if you're ever interested in being on the show, hit us up. We're always glad to talk to new people.
Okay, so switch over a bit. I think you're out of frame.
All right.
Yeah, this is like, we're pretty close quarters. I'm used to having all this space by myself and not being around humans. And all of a sudden, I used to be a touchy-feely person, and that was very uncomfortable for me. Like,